Hi there, I'm Kevin Bailey, and thank you very much indeed for watching the next installment of Unfiltered. Today I have Robert Mol, who is going to be talking to us about data proliferation and the efficacy challenges in the application of analytics. Hi Robert, great to see you.
Hi Kevin, good to see you again.
Excellent, thanks very much. So for the viewers, can you just give us a quick summary of who you are?
Sure, Kevin. God, where do I start? I think maybe with my name. And so Robert Mol, I have been in the business of analytics and business intelligence for a good 10 to 12 years now. Ran large analytics teams in a couple of enterprise organizations, and from there set up my own business where we looked at more in-depth methods of analyzing business opportunities for large clients, particularly in the enterprise. So my skills are very practical. I've built up a rapport with lots of business leaders, helping them to better understand their internal organizations.
That's great. Thanks very much, Robert. And I look forward to hearing more about some of your interactions and the reality of them as we go through this discussion. Thanks, Robert. So let's get straight into this. So what do you believe are the issues that you think exist today with data proliferation, efficacy of data, in the way that organizations, individuals are applying this to analytics?
Yeah, great question, Kevin. Let me start by saying it's all about the volume of data, how you manage it, and what you actually want to get out of it. So that is, for me, the big question overall when we talk about proliferation and efficacy, is that in 9 out of 10 times that I talk to organizations, no matter what size they are, the challenge always begins when they look at an analytics project. The challenge begins with understanding, where is my data? Is it complete? Who owns it? Where can I find it? Is it duplicated? Who has access to it? And nobody really ever understands the whole picture. And so for me, the biggest challenge in this industry is still data management, because where we come in is within the analytics world. What we put into the analytics has an impact on what comes out. And if the bad thing goes in, a really bad thing comes out. And there lies, I think, the biggest risk in what we do, is if we're not confident about what kind of data we are manipulating, analyzing, investigating, we don't know whether or not the results are actually truthful and applicable to large organizations, or in fact, any organization.
So you, in one way, you're saying then that, let's call it the analyzers of the data, are you saying they're putting bias into their programs, or they are hoping that the outcome of the programs is what they intended, rather than allowing the program to present the results and then take the next stage forwards?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that. One is they believe that the data that they have is the best possible to analyze. But on the flip side, they're also uncertain what the outcome should really be.
Right.
So believing in your data doesn't necessarily mean it's going to give you the output that you desire. And that's, I think, fundamentally where, to put it very simply, we have a lot of projects with quite a few customers where we say, right, to analyze this portion of your business, we need to have your sales data, we need to understand your partners, we need to understand your customers, to mix essentially all of those together into an analytics engine to come up with the right kinds of insights, but actually also the right kind of methodology and modeling to determine what the answer is to the question that they have asked us to solve.
Yeah.
And in that situation, it's often, well, we know 50% of our partner data because some of the partners don't really report very effectively. We know probably 90% of our customer data, but some of it, hasn't been refreshed for a long time. And so you see where I'm going with this is, yes, we have data, but the quality and the governance, I suppose, around that data is still far from being optimal. And it at the moment, the way I've seen it so far with our clients, it doesn't matter how large you are or how many people you have employed, it happens in every organization. And that's kind of where I think the connection between data and analytics, business forecasting and opportunity, cyber risk and security, and everything else that happens in the digital landscape is all impacted by the same thing.
So do you, if you, you and I have been around long enough to sit and listen to people talking about, data's the new DNA. It's the new oil that's out there because it's got more value than oil. But has it? Do you think then the businesses, end user businesses, and the vendors, this is any organization that collects data, has done a bad job in the past about managing data and just assumed that if they can store it and access it for the storage capability, then that's good enough. But actually now they want to take all these disparate data sets and bring them together, but nothing's clean, nothing's right, and everything's either not updated, historical data, and it could mean, in my view, this thing about machine learning and learning, training something, it's been trained on the wrong stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge discrepancy, I suppose, between well, first of all, if you look at oil and you look at data, there's one big difference between the two. Oil is always the same. It's always black and it's always running. Data is constantly changing. It's constantly updating. And I think, that sort of comparison to say that data is the new oil or data is the new gold, whatever, is a really risky one to say, only because if you then apply that same model to utilizing the data in your business, you're going to get nowhere. You're going to get into very risky areas. So I think to answer your question more clearly, I think the single thing that I've seen in perhaps a few instances where there's really long-term visionary thinking going on in a boardroom or a leadership team, it is about a 3 to 5 year plan, and probably not much longer, but that 3 to 5 year plan is all about understanding the baseline of the business and understanding how to structure the operation effectively before you start creating these high level strategic intentions about this is our sales objective, or this is our global domination objective, or whatever it is. And within that focus, there is that planning, that long-term planning, there is a prioritization around data and the management of data. It trickles down, absolutely, but I think that's fundamentally what's wrong with most organizations, is there is no priority to look at data, to understand where we store it, to know whether it's clean or not. And so that's I always how many organizations do you know that have a chief data officer, right? It's still, they're starting to trickle in. Sometimes you see chief analyst officers these days, but realistically, those are not the guys that are looking at how the data is being stored or managed or protected. And yes, there's definitely the CISO. He will probably, or he or she, sorry, will probably have a look at understanding the data because of from a security perspective. But from an organizational point of view, I don't think they're tied to one another. So there's not a consistent conversation about how do we manage data to, one, protect it, two, analyze it, and three, apply it to our future business strategy. And therefore, the input of that data into, as you said, an analytics system really skews the output for a business strategist, for example, or an operational team. And I think that's the same risk that apply to a cybersecurity team looking at how much data they have and the duplication thereof applies to analytics and the industry in which I operate. Because again, the risk of us utilizing data that might not even be the company's own, but it's been inserted into the company through malicious practices is very, very high. And that's kind of where I'm going with this efficacy thing. Is if there is a more formal structure around ethics, and what are the guidelines and rules that we should really be applying to them, you have less of a risk, I suppose, of putting yourself out there with the wrong answers.
Let's pick up on that point, Robert, that you spoke about security. Yeah, that's where the vast majority of my time is spent, is working with cybersecurity vendors out in the market or talking to CISOs. And in a recent research project that I've done, dealing with CISOs across the globe, in a qualitative research project. So I actually spoke to them. It wasn't tick box exercise that was there. And they raised their awareness around data analytics. That they're saying they're spending more time and obviously more of their budget in this area. And they see it as a driver to help get them into the enterprise risk management framework that they believe cybersecurity and data should be a part of, alongside all the traditional operational HR economies, stuff like that is out there. I believe and know that data is a massive, massive value to cyber criminals, as everyone's seen. What are the issues you see around, especially around the efficacy of data and its use in data analytics, to ensure that organizations stay secure when they're trying to analyze what they can do about their business using data as that propagator?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Kevin. I think if you look at ERM, I think the CISOs are right. It's a little outdated, right? I'm still surprised that cybersecurity is not part of the frameworks at the moment. And even if organizations have applied or are implementing best practices around data management, and within the context of their security frameworks, it's still not the same as understanding all the different locations where that data might emerge from. So what I mean to say with that is that I think we've, over the last 10 years, I suppose, right, we've had this shift from very centralized budgets, management of IT systems, HR systems, and all the other functional areas of the business, to a much more dispersed way of investing money into IT, into technology, and with the risk that in certain pockets of the business, you suddenly see small data sets emerge that have absolutely no link to all the other data in the business. Right. On top of that, a CISO, for example, I can imagine, you probably know much better than I do, but has no control, or the team that manages the security of that organization has no control over where that data actually resides, or whether or not it actually leaves the building, for that matter, right? It could be sitting on someone's company laptop, but who knows, because it's not part of that same risk framework that the CISO might be implementing from a security standpoint. So I think the largest risk, and again, we see it today as well. We work with some very large international organizations, and some of them have set up applications that just function within their own group, and nobody else knows about it, right? And that's where we get the data. The risk for us, of course, from an analytics perspective, is that we apply that data to an analytical model that is not just from a single data source, but includes data sources from elsewhere in the business. But contextually, there is no relationship between the two,
Right.
because the data that's been developed in that singular system in someone's back office has been developed specifically for that area, applies to the analytics model, but there is no context against all the other data points. Right. And I think from an ethical standpoint, that's just, you can't imagine a business being able to operate on those grounds, I suppose.
So if you have that, so we've got the issues that are there, and obviously both from an operational standpoint of increasing the value of data, and also mitigating the exceptions where they come into the cybersecurity arena. What do you believe? What do you and your organization and the people that you work with and your customers believe needs to be done to address these issues and put into place? You mentioned that a lot of them, or a number of them, have got long-term plans, but we're in the here and now, and 2020 is an example of how things are so turbulent that businesses need to have that edge, and analytics is something that could create that edge for people. I know in cybersecurity, threat intelligence comes through from data, and that's what we try to do. So what do you believe needs to be done to address those issues that we've raised?
Yeah, again, really good question. And I think there are a few things. For one, I mean, my data scientist, he always talks about this, and I think it's fundamentally one of the most important, very practical areas that that data analysts, data scientists, data managers essentially should be looking at, which is this notion of creating a singular data cube-like source of truth within your business. And how that essentially develops itself is by centralizing lots of these processes that manage applications, systems, access, security, and everything else to data, right? And although that sounds a little bit like going back to the dark ages of having all this control at the corporate headquarters, in reality is, as you quite rightly say, it all starts with the management and the quality of that data. So without having control over that singular point of contact with the data, and understanding, being really careful about understanding where it comes from, who's developed it, what are the policies around it, can we actually keep this, can we utilize it, can we analyze it, etc., etc. You can't move on. And I think that's, I think an ERM would definitely be a good framework to build these elements into. So I think data management, although there's lots of principles around it, combining data management with cybersecurity is a given. You can't go around it. But putting that within the framework of enterprise resource, ERM, you really want to see, you can see the access to all these different data sets from wherever in the organization. And then I think that's where the filtering comes in, but also the the biggest mishap in the organization is nobody knows who actually controls the data, right? So yeah, I can go into a business and email someone and say, can you send me over that customer list? Is he allowed to send that customer list? He probably doesn't know, even though he probably was trained on it, right? And it's in that practicality of working every day, and in that, you know, automized, sorry, I can't even say that word, automatic reaction to someone's question, that's what I should be saying, that people respond, and there is no control. So fundamentally, from a to answer the question very clearly, there is only one answer. You need to all put it into a single framework, because otherwise there is no control. That's I think the big risk. And yeah,
so if you think about putting it into a single framework, and as I mentioned before, everyone knows the disruption that's happened this year and is going to go into beginning of next year. Data analytics doesn't come for free. Let's put it that way. You've got to buy software, you've got to buy hardware, you've got to have resources to do this. Do these frameworks, these models, these central areas have longevity? Because the problem you get with a lot of technology and the speed we're moving at today is it's out of date as quickly as you bought it. So the chief data officer or the CIO or whoever's in charge of running this project has got to know that they're going to spend some money, but they're not going to have the availability of capital to go and do it again in 2 years' time, when you work out that actually we bought the wrong package, or this doesn't give us longevity for the next future of machine learning and deep learning that we want to put in there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The speed with which technology is moving at the moment is incredible, and it's so fast that most organizations can't even follow where to go next. I don't think necessarily that's going to influence the fundamental need for a data management policy or framework, because I think if you consider the data to be the core of your business, and these applications to be the periphery, and then your customers to be the outside layer, that core will always remain the same, meaning you will always put in data. It will always put in data, and it's more the question of how to manage that data that's fundamental. So rather than having 5 cores around your business, bring them all together, create consistency, understand the way you manage data, understand who has access to it, and create that basic layer of understanding. Then you can much easier apply new technologies and new ways of utilizing that data, because you're confident, or at least you're more confident, that the data layer is correct in a way that you can utilize the data for these applications. Because I think that's the thinking is here. How do you know whether or not that data is yours? How do you know someone has tampered with it? That's kind of the fundamental first step you need to undertake before you can start thinking about investing in any other technology. And I think the same applies to analytics. I mean, for me, there's no point in doing analytics if you're not really sure about the data set you're going to provide. Right? If you think, well, you've got half of it, or you think you've got stuff that might not be yours, be very careful. And I think that's, so as long as that layer in the organization, or that element of operations is managed more effectively and looked at more effectively, and I think prioritized more effectively, then everything else will fall into place. And you can speed up your agile application development, or you can speed up the applications that you want to use for analytics, or all those peripheral technologies will just link into it. But I think the fundamental bit is, how to manage that data.
So if you think about it, I know, you and I chat about your client base. So, so why do they choose you? It's this isn't a, you do a bake-off of systems. So, you and I have known each other a long time, and I laugh and joke about, why people choose you and your team to go in and work with them. So, what are the tangibles? You've mentioned all this stuff. So why are you better than somebody else that does this type of analytics?
That's not a great question, but a very interesting one, and one I should be able to answer fairly quickly, obviously. So I think there's a couple of benefits of working with a team like us versus larger organizations, I suppose, that do the same thing. For one, we're incredibly agile, and we have an enormous skill set that allow us to turn around projects at very high speed. So to give you an example, we're managing a large global sales enablement project for a software company, one that really wanted to understand the ROI of all their partner and sales enablement activities. Right. And Kevin, there's thousands of courses that they execute on. There are requirements that they have from a partner perspective versus an internal sales perspective. And we managed to turn around that project successfully in 2 months. Right. Within the context of that, though, we've had a couple of challenges on data, right? So we can't fulfill all the requirements because they can't access all the data. But so far, I think the best way to answer that question is that the response from our customers has been incredible and very positive, and they've managed to actually demonstrate hard ROI in terms of implementing the analytics that we've done. Yeah. So not just looking at do the analysis on my partner install base or do the analysis on my sales enablement, but actually looking at the actionable insights and converting that into efficiency, effectiveness, and profitability, or increased profitability. Yeah. And that's and coincidentally, one of our large clients in EMEA said, I can't believe this has actually saved my team over 40 hours a week on looking at Excel sheets, right. Which they were still doing that, 15 different Excel sheets, trying to compare one to the other, probably using some tables to match up the data, but actually putting it all into an analytics engine and us creating the effective dashboards for them has saved them enormous amounts of time. So if you convert that into money over a year's period, it's quite a lot.
No, but it's great. Thanks very much indeed for this session. It's really good, and I look forward to publishing this, and obviously for you and I to continue interacting again, as we always have been over the last decade or more. And we'll see what the next thing has in store for data analytics.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for this, Kevin. Looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thanks very much.